let's get back to the one powerful space in the markets, and that's been power. Let's try and dissect threadbare really what's been happening within the power sector. With the China power shortage woes, the power industry has clearly spooked the global supply chain. So it's important to understand the India impact of this and where does India stand and get disrupted in the scheme of things. Two gentlemen to really dissect what's happening within the power space globally as well as in India. Somesh Kumar, partner and leader, power at Ernst & Young. And we also have with us Mr. Anil Razdan, former power secretary, joining in on the show right now. Gentlemen, good morning. Good to have you both on the show. Mr. Razdan, if I could start off with you. There is clearly a power shortage which is playing out in China. That's sort of having a disruption within the supply chain dynamics as well. But just wanted to understand what would it really mean for India, because that has a multiplier effect of sorts. It's seeing a spike in coal prices, natural gas prices. It has a global impact, whatever is happening in China with regards to the power shortage.
You're right. You see, China being such a large economy, it's whatever happens there does send very strong global signals. Now, you see, we are coming through, I would say, almost two crises. And in the case of China, there's a third factor that is added, in my view. One is, you see, that we got through this COVID times globally where economies had slowed down and transactions had reduced. Now, suddenly, with the economies reopening, there are bound to be disruptions in the economy. The industry was also down. Trade was not happening to the scale it was taking place earlier. Compounded with that is, you see, some oil shocks. With the oil prices going up, people are probably turning back to coal-based generation, which is more economic. A third factor, I would say, in the case of China is that, you see, they're very image conscious. And this image consciousness, I think they're preparing for the Olympics. I read somewhere, and I had occasion to go there when they were hosting the main Olympics at one stage. At that time, they were very keen on projecting blue skies. So maybe they had asked industry or maybe the power stations to slow down a bit. I think that is one factor. The other factor, you see, that is looming large is declaration of net zero emissions. Now, you may declare something, but when your whole energy edifice is built on fossil fuels, you cannot transit easily into renewables unless your renewable program, which is, mind you, it is intermittent by its very nature, it is accompanied by storage so that you provide that stabilizing factor and also some banking of power, which is extremely important in some cases. And that is why in earlier times, said the hydro was the banking factor. Today, it is storage of another form, chemical storage, which is going to be a balancing factor in the future. So economies which are burgeoning demand, which are very strong, and I think this fever may also hit Europe as the cold sets in and heating requirements go up and the oil on the boil, and you're asking other fossil fuels to come down, and renewables may not be as strong. So suddenly there'll be a spurt in, I expect a greater spurt in oil prices as predicted. So that, I think, as far as China is concerned, now these countries have been in the race. They already have very high per capita emissions. And I think India needs to also flag before Glasgow that there has to be equity in the per capita emissions. We're only half of the global average per capita emissions. And I was gladdened that the power minister has taken that kind of a stance. We need to have some kind of equity in the world. Yes, climate brings us all together, but it also should bring a realization that the pie must be shared. And we cannot start talking of net zero without solutions in sight for the new technologies to developing countries
Sure.
like India. On
Sure.
the other hand, I mean, you've not
Sure.
yet.
So, Mish Kumar, if I could get you in on this discussion, what could be the India Connect? Right. So, Mish Kumar, what could be the India Connect? Given that at a time we have seen weakish monsoon, we've seen the reopening of industries coming off from the pandemic woes, and you are seeing a very escalated, heightened power demand.
Thank you so much for having me here today. We saw a pandemic period where the demand had really gone down significantly. The economy was not looking good, and everybody was really talking about what is going to happen next. From that, we have come to a situation where we see the demand going back to normal. In fact, much more than what it used to be in certain cases. Economy is picking up. Things are looking quite buoyant. So for power sector, if you look at it, things are looking back to normal. They're looking good as we see them right now. As Mr. Razdan also said, now the whole focus again is going back to renewables as of now. But given the international and national challenges that we are seeing, the question on going back to coal and the whole net zero phenomenon is under question mark. But again, as we see right now, the demand is back up. The focus is on bringing about increased capacity into the sector, particularly renewables. I also see a lot of emphasis on reforming the distribution sector. You must have seen the latest power sector reforms revamp scheme that came out. So that is focusing on the much needed distribution sector once again. Given some preconditions, some benchmarks, I think that is a good scheme, and I see a lot of states coming forward to actually subscribe to the scheme and get benefits under that scheme, and also commit to modernization and improvement of the distribution network, which is much needed. That is the leg of the power sector. That is the biggest impact creator for the whole sector, and I think the right moves are being taken as of now. The only thing is that the states should design the right kind of scheme for themselves, which is reliable, authentic, and then follow it for 4 5 years. So I think both on the generation front as well as on the distribution front, we are taking the right steps to reform the sector and in turn cater to the economy. So I'm quite hopeful and buoyant about the power sector going forward.
Okay. Somesh, what I would like to understand from you, and it's a question actually that Nikunj threw up in the morning, right at the start of the show. We talk about ESG, China wanting blue skies ahead of the Winter Olympics. We've seen images today of how the Chinese are using flashlights at night, right? So we're seeing those images, and it's being compounded also by the coal shortage and the ESG crisis. The ESG entry barrier in India, can that become a problem? Yes, this government has enacted a lot of reforms at the moment. The markets are still understanding a lot of them. There, are we lacking? And then what is that going to mean as far as investments go?
Yeah, so I think that's a very good question. ESG is certainly a very, very important requirement of today's time. And besides the legal and the regulatory framework and the emphasis on that, I think there is a lot of push which each and every organization, each and every responsible corporate is putting towards it, whether it is in power sector or elsewhere. I don't personally see that as a bottleneck in the growth journey. we definitely need to be more environmentally, socially aware and conscious of what we are doing. And of course, I would not like to comment on some of the things that China is doing, whether those are environmentally responsible or not. But I think, as far as India is concerned, I think what we are trying to do is to enable our growth and at the same time be more ESG compliant. And even some of the larger companies, for instance, some of the larger coal companies, or some of the thermal power based companies are also looking at ways and means to how to improve their environmental footprint. So I think all in all, everything may not be accomplished at one go, but given the thrust and the focus that we have on ESG, I strongly believe that we can have good growth journey with a ESG compliant system. So I'm quite hopeful on that as well.
Mr. Razdan, of late, we've seen a lot of reforms that have been announced. It's not just the prepaid electricity meters, the Electricity Act that they've been talking about, but also a pass-through. Discoms being encouraged to, pass on the cost as well, just so that everyone's finances are better. With coal prices going up, long term, do you see the power price, the electricity cost acting as a pass-through? Luckily, right now, natural gas, is used for power production. I think the capacity is only about 5%. So we are primarily a thermal power-based country.
First things first, I would say that you see where we have maybe gone amiss in the whole power sector is that we didn't realize sufficiently that no store or no commercial establishment can run without a payment till. That is as important because money must come back into circulation and go back to the originator of whoever is supplying fuel, whoever is supplying power. So that is a prerequisite. We used it too long, I think, as a developmental aided, a development and an election-oriented commodity. Yes, we needed to supply power, but you cannot open any commercial activity without a payment mechanism which brings the money back. You can't have a store, as I mentioned, without a till at the end. Otherwise, people will come and loot the store and go away and say, thank you very much, and forget about it the next day and say, which is the next store now? Or when is this being rebooted? So I think that is one thing which will need very great emphasis. The second, I think, is as we are moving to renewables, we need to again move very strongly, as indications are, on storage. Unless you're able to do that, we are going to have problems there. Again, with the intermittent power. We are working on it. We should, I think, make sure that these movements move in parallel. As far as coal supply is concerned, normally at this time of the year, after the monsoons and particularly delayed rains this year and very freakish rains, coal mining does get affected. It has always got affected. Now, this time, I think somehow the power consumption cycle has clashed with this little dip in coal availability. Now, the Coal India, of course, wants that the norm is that, you keep 20 days coal in store. It is not economic to keep 20 days coal stock in store unless you're giving that commodity on credit. But if you give it on credit, there again, Coal India could run into a problem. So it comes down to more efficient transportation. Hopefully, I think I have been following closely what Coal India has been saying, what the coal secretary has been saying, and I'm hopeful that the coal shortage will be evened out soon.
Correct. Yes, it's certainly looking like that. In August, India did manage it when we saw a huge demand for power coming back. In other news, ladies and gentlemen, earlier this week, we did see the government remove 22,000 redundant compliances for the power sector. That's a big move. It's a conversation we will be having through the week and next week too, right here on ET Now. Power sector back in focus and how.